Basic to Intermediate Scenarios 1 to 25. These scenarios focus on core API usage, locator strategies, and fundamental debugging. Let me just introduce you to the 50 scenario-based interview questions and answers using JavaScript. Auto waiting and timeouts. Scenario: you are testing a login flow. After clicking sign in, the page navigates to a dashboard, but a spinner appears for a variable amount of time, 1 to 5 seconds. Your test keeps failing because it tries to click the settings button before the spinner disappears. How do you fix this without using sleep? Answer: Playwright has auto waiting. The click action will automatically wait for the settings button to be visible and enabled. I don't need an explicit sleep. However, I should use expect page.locator.spinner to be hidden or page.waitForSelector.spinner state hidden to ensure the dynamic content is fully loaded before proceeding. Handling alerts. Scenario: you click a delete account button, which triggers a JavaScript confirm dialog asking, are you sure? How do you handle this in Playwright to either accept or dismiss the dialog? Playwright requires a dialog handler to be set up before the action that triggers the alert. I would use page.onDialog.accept function before clicking the delete button. If I want to cancel, I would use dialog.dismiss. Geolocation testing. Scenario is you need to test a store locator feature on a website. You are located in Berlin, but the feature only shows stores in London. How can you test the Berlin specific results without physically traveling to Berlin? Playwright allows you to mock the geolocation at the context level. I would create a new browser context with the geolocation option set to Berlin coordinates, longitude 13.44, latitude 52.5200, and grant the geolocation permission using context.grantPermissions. Mobile viewport testing. Scenario: a bug is reported only on the iPhone 12 Safari browser. You are on a Windows machine. How do you replicate and debug this using Playwright? I would use Playwright's device emulation. Playwright provides a built-in device descriptor for iPhone 12. I can import devices from Playwright and use test.use devices iPhone 12 to simulate the viewport, user agent, and touch events even on a Windows machine. Isn't it great? Shadow DOM. Scenario: the developers have implemented a complex web component using Shadow DOM. The button you need to click is buried inside a My Custom Element shadow root. Standard CSS selectors fail. What is the correct approach? Answer to this Shadow DOM question is Playwright has first-class support for Shadow DOM. Unlike Selenium, you don't need special deep CSS selectors. I can simply chain locators. Playwright will automatically pierce the shadow root. For example, page.locator my custom element dot get by role button name submit dot click. File upload. Scenario: you are automating a profile settings page. There is an input of the type file that accepts profile pictures. Write the code to upload photo.png. Answer: you do not need to simulate the operating system file picker. Use the set input files method on the input element. Await page.locator input type equal to file dot set input files path to photo.png. To clear it, pass an empty array. File download. Scenario: you click an export CSV button. The download takes 3 seconds to generate on the backend. How do you ensure Playwright waits for the file to be fully downloaded and then saves it to a specific folder? Answer: I will use page.expect dot underscore download function, Python, or page.wait for event download, JavaScript. This creates a promise that resolves once the download starts. I can then wait for the download to complete using download.save as path to save.csv or download.path function to access the temporary file. Keyboard shortcuts. Scenario. Your application has a save function triggered by Control plus S or CMD plus S on Mac. How do you simulate this key combination? Answer. Use the page.keyboard API. On Windows Linux, await page.keyboard.press Control plus S. On Mac, await page.keyboard.press Meta plus S. To ensure cross-platform compatibility in tests, you can detect the OS. Visual regression scenario. The CSS styling for a hero banner changed slightly. You want to ensure future changes don't accidentally break the layout further. How do you set up a test for this? Answer. I would use visual regression testing via expect page dot to have screenshot. The first run generates a baseline image. Subsequent runs compare pixels. If the change was intentional, I run the test with dash dash update dash snapshots to save the new baseline. Handling tabs pages. Scenario. You click a link that opens a new tab. Target equal to underscore blank. Your test is currently stuck on the original tab. How do you switch to the new tab to verify the URL? Answer is Playwright's page object is scoped to a single tab. I need to wait for the new page tab event. Const page promise equal to context dot wait for event page. Await page dot click a target equal to blank. Const new page equal to await page promise. Await new page dot wait for load state. Slow network simulation scenario. You need to test how your app behaves on a 3G network. For example, slow loading spinners. How do you throttle the network in Playwright? Answer. You can emulate network conditions using the context options. In the browser context configuration, you can set the offline flag or emulate specific network speeds. Though it's often easier to mock slow API responses using page.route and adding artificial delays, for example, set timeout. iFrames. The payment gateway form is inside an iframe with an ID that changes dynamically on every page load. For example, iframe 12345. How do you interact with the card number field inside? Answer. I'll use page.frame locator function with a URL pattern or a static attribute if possible. Since the ID is dynamic, I should use frame underscore locator iframe source equal to payment to locate the iframe by a stable part of its source attribute, then chain locators inside. Retry logic scenario. Your CI pipeline runs 1000 tests. About 5% fail randomly due to network blips, flaky tests. How do you configure Playwright to automatically retry only the failed ones? In the playwright.config.ts or JS file, I can configure retries too. In the project settings, Playwright will rerun only the failed tests up to 2 times. I also set report slow tests to identify genuinely slow performance. CI had less issues. The test runs perfectly on your local machine, headed mode, but fails in CI headless mode because an element is not visible. What is the likely discrepancy? Answer. Headless mode runs at a different screen resolution or viewport size than my local machine. The element might be off screen or collapsed in the CI viewport. I will explicitly set viewport width 1920, height 1080 in the config to standardize the resolution across both environments. Date picker. Scenario. The UI has a custom React date picker that requires clicking the next month arrow 5 times to reach the current year's December. How do you robustly select December 15th without chaining 5 clicks? Answer. I would use page.fill on the underlying input field if the date picker accepts text input. If it is a read-only custom widget, I will use page.locator selectors.evaluate to directly set the date property via JavaScript or loop the next click until the desired month appears using page.locator month dash text dot text content. Broken images. Scenario. You want to audit a page to ensure no images are returning 404 errors. How can Playwright check all images on a page? I would use page.evaluate to run JavaScript in the browser context. The script would iterate over all image elements, check the natural width property. 0 indicates broken, or use fetch to check status codes. I can then assert that no broken images are found. Drag and drop. Scenario. You need to drag a task element from a to-do element to a done column. Answer. Playwright provides page.drag and drop function helper. Await page.drag and drop task 1 column done. This handles mouse down, move, and up events automatically. For complex scenarios, I can use the lower level page.mouse API. Console errors scenario. You want to fail the test automatically if the React application throws a client-side error red screen in the console. Answer. I will subscribe to the console event on the page. In the test setup, I can push errors into an array. In the assertion phase, I check if the array contains any type error that is not expected. Basic auth HTTP auth scenario. You are testing a staging environment protected by a standard HTTP basic authentication pop-up, not an HTML form. Answer. Playwright handles this via the context options. Instead of trying to fill the pop-up, I pass credentials in the URL or context. Browser.new context, HTTP credentials, username admin, password pass. Accessibility. A11Y scenario. Management wants to ensure that the login page has proper area labels. How can Playwright help check this? Playwright's Get by Role locator is inherently accessibility focused. I can use Get by Role button name sign in to assert the button exists. For deeper checks, I can integrate Playwright with Xcore X Playwright to run automated accessibility scans. Playwright Parallel execution isolation. Scenario. You run tests in parallel, but test A logs in as user A and modifies the profile, while test B logs in as user B and checks profile data. They conflict. How do you fix this? Answer. I need to ensure test isolation. I will use browser.newContext function for each test case. Browser contexts are like incognito windows. They have completely isolated storage, cookies, local storage. If test A logs in, it does not affect test B's session. Waiting for API response scenario. You fill out a search box. The UI does not show a loading spinner but updates the results only after a fetch request to API search completes. How do you wait for the results to be ready? Answer: I will use page dot wait for response function. Wait page promise dot all page dot wait for response dot URL includes API search and response dot status equals 200 page dot fill search playwright page dot press search enter. Select drop down scenario. You have a standard select drop down for country. How do you select Germany? Use the select option method. Await page dot select option country Germany. I can also select by value, label, or index. Taking screenshots of elements scenario. You only need a screenshot of a specific chart on the page, not the whole page for documentation. Answer: I will scope the screenshot method to the specific locator. Await page dot locator monthly sales chart dot screenshot path chart dot png. Tracing scenario. A test failed in CI, but the logs aren't enough. You need to see exactly what the user clicked, the network request, and the DOM snapshot at each step. Answer: I will enable tracing. I configure trace on first retry in the config. When a test fails, it generates a trace.zip. I download this artifact and run npx playwright show dash trace trace.zip to open the trace viewer, which provides a full timeline, DOM snapshots, and network logs. Advanced and senior scenarios 26 to 50. These scenarios focus on architecture, network manipulation, CI/CD, and framework design. Mocking API responses. Scenario: the backend API is not ready yet, but the UI is finished. You need to test how the frontend displays an out of stock badge on a product page. How do you do this without a real backend? I will use page.route to intercept the network request that fetches the product data. I will provide a mock JSON response where the stock level is 0. This allows me to test the UI behavior completely independent of the backend API. Session reuse scenario. You have a suite of 50 tests. Logging in for each test takes 2 seconds, 100 seconds total. How do you reduce this overhead? Answer: I will use global setup or storage state. I run script once that logs in and saves the session cookie local storage to a storage state.json file. Then in playwright.config.ts, I set storage state.json so every test starts already authenticated. Modifying requests scenario. You want to test the offline mode UI. You need to intercept a specific API call, API live data, and force it to fail with a 503 error. Answer: I will use page.route API live data route.abort failed, or route.fulfill status 503. This tricks the front end into thinking the server is down, allowing me to verify the error UI is displayed. Custom fixtures scenario. You find yourself writing const auth page await create authenticated page user in every test. How do you refactor this to keep the code dry? Don't repeat yourself. Answer: I will create custom fixtures. In Playwright test, I can extend the test object. For example, const test equal to base dot extend admin page async browser use const page equal to await browser new page login logic await use page. Now I can just use admin page in my tests. CI/CD sharding scenario. Your full regression suite takes 45 minutes to run on a single agent. You need to reduce this to under 10 minutes. I'll use sharding. Playwright supports splitting tests across multiple CI agents. I can run npx playwright test dash dash shared shard equal to 1 by 3 on agent 1 dash dash shard equal to 2 by 3 on agent 2, etc. Playwright automatically distributes the spec files evenly. Web first assertions versus regular assertions scenario. You are checking the text of a dynamically loading element. Why does await expect locator to have text hello work but expect await locator dot text content to be hello fails intermittently? Answer: the Playwright web first assertion expect locator dot to have text retries until the condition is met or a timeout is reached. The standard assertion evaluates the text content immediately. If the network is slow, the element might not have rendered the text yet, causing a false narrative. Component testing. You need to test a specific React button component that has complex state logic, for example, disabled until props change. You don't want to navigate through a whole page to test it. Answer: Playwright has a component testing mode. I can mount the component directly in the test without a full page deployment. Await mount button disabled equal to false, click button and interact with it as if it were on a real page. This is much faster and more focused than end-to-end testing. Rate limiting. Web scraping defense scenario. You are building a web scraping tool. The target site blocks you after 100 requests from the same IP. How do you scale to 10,000 requests? Answer: I will use a proxy rotation service. I can configure Playwright to launch a browser context with a specific proxy server. By rotating proxies residential or data center per context, I distribute the load and avoid IP-based rate limiting. Network throttling devices scenario. The application uses window.inner width to adjust layout. You want to test a specific tablet layout, for example iPad mini, with a resolution of 768 into 1024. Answer: I'll use test.use viewport width 768 height 1024. Playwright will set the viewport size, and I can also combine this with user agent to simulate an iPad, ensuring the CSS media queries trigger correctly. Testing PDF generation scenario. You click a generate report button, which opens a PDF in a new tab. How do you verify the text revenue summary exists inside the generated PDF? Playwright cannot parse PDF content directly via DOM selectors because PDFs are not HTML. I will use page.wait for event page to catch the new tab, close it, and then use node.js libraries like pdf-parse to read the downloaded file content, or save the PDF and use expect PDF text dot to contain revenue summary. Debugging with inspector scenario. You are trying to write a complex selector, but you keep getting element not found. You want to pause the test and try selectors live in a browser window. Answer: I will insert await page.pause or page.pause in JS into the test. When I run the test, Playwright will open the Playwright inspector. I can then use the pick locator button to hover over elements and get the exact recommended selector or try out page.locator commands in real time. Video recording for failures scenario. Your team wants to watch a video of the browser screen for any test that fails in the CI pipeline to understand the exact moment of failure. I will enable video recording in the playwright.config.ts file or JS file. Video retain on failure. Playwright will only save the video if the test fails, otherwise it discards it to save disk space. This is perfect for CI environments. Testing OAuth flows Google GitHub scenario. Your app uses login with Google. You cannot automate Google's CAPTCHA. What is the industry standard approach to test this? We do not automate third-party login forms directly. Instead, we mock the OAuth callback, intercept the redirect URL, and mock the token response. Test via API. Use the Google API to generate a test token, then inject it directly into the browser context via page.add init script. Use test user sessions saved as storage state. Wow. Conditional testing scenario. On a welcome screen, an optional tour guide pop-up appears randomly for 50% of new users. You need to close it if it appears, but proceed if it doesn't. I avoid if-then logic as it makes tests brittle. However, if necessary, I use page.locator to close is visible, then visible, if visible. I prefer to mock the feature flag that controls the tour guide to ensure deterministic behavior, either always on or always off for the test. Code generation. You have a complex 20-step workflow. You are too lazy to write the locators manually. How does Playwright help you bootstrap this test quickly? I'll use the CodeGen tool. Running npx playwright CodeGen opens a browser and recorder window. As I click through the workflow, Playwright writes the code locators and actions in real time. I copy that code into my test file and then refactor it for reusability and assertions. Monitoring production scenario. You want to run a Playwright test every 5 minutes against production to check if the site is up and login works. Synthetic monitoring. What runtime do you use? I would write a simple script using the Playwright library, not the test runner, or use the test runner in a standalone node.js script. I would run this via a cron job or a cloud function, AWS Lambda GitHub Actions. I would ensure headless, true, and minimal resource usage. Multi-language support I18N. Scenario. The website text changes based on the accept language header. You need to verify the French translation for hello. I will intercept the request using page.route and modify the headers. Await page.route.continue headers route.request headers accept language fr. This forces the server to return French content without changing the browser settings. Handling data test ID scenario. Your team agrees to use data test ID attributes. The developers add data test ID equal to submit button. What is the best practice to locate this element to ensure it is fast and resilient? Answer: I will use page.get by test ID submit button. This is a built-in method optimized for this exact attribute. It is preferred over CSS selectors like data test ID equal to submit button because it is cleaner and less prone to typos. Testing WebSockets scenario. Your app displays real-time stock prices via WebSockets. How do you verify that the UI updates when a WebSocket message is received? Playwright does not directly mock WebSocket frames easily via route. I would use page.evaluate to inject a mock WebSocket object into the page's JavaScript context, or I rely on a real backend environment. For verification, I wait for the DOM element containing the stock price to change from its initial value using expect locator dot not to have text 0. Performance testing scenario. You want to ensure that the time to interactive TTI for the home page does not exceed 3 seconds. I can use Playwright with the performance.timing API using page.evaluate. I can retrieve performance.timing data. I would subtract a response and from DOM interactive. I can also use page.goto with wait until network idle and measure the time taken using date.now. Browser context isolation security. Test A saves a token in local storage. Test B running later accidentally reads that token. How does Playwright prevent this by default? By default, if you use browser.new context for each test, Playwright creates a completely isolated browser context. This is similar to a brand new incognito profile. Local storage, cookies, and session data are not shared between contexts unless explicitly configured to do so via storage state. CI artifacts management scenario. In CI, when a test fails, you want to automatically save the screenshot, the video, and the trace file to the pipeline's artifact storage. In playwright config.ts, I set trace.on first retry screenshot only on failure and video retain on failure. The playwright a report automatically attaches these files to the test results. The CI system, GitHub Actions, GitLab CI Jenkins picks up the test results folder as an artifact. Lighthouse integration. You want to run Google Lighthouse performance score as part of your Playwright test suite. I'll use the Playwright API to navigate to the page, then use page.goto function. After the page loads, I can use the Lighthouse node.js library, passing the Playwright page instance or the debugging port to Lighthouse to generate the performance report within the same test flow. Hybrid API UI testing scenario. You need to set up a complex user state, for example, 100 times items in a cart. That would take 5 minutes to click via the UI. How do you speed this up? I'll use a hybrid approach. I use Playwright's API request context to call the backend API directly to add the 100 items to the cart. After the API call succeeds, I refresh the page.reload. The UI will now display the 100 items instantly, saving 5 minutes of UI clicking. Configuring expect timeouts globally. Scenario. You have a very slow chart rendering library that sometimes takes 15 seconds to draw. You want all expect assertions to wait longer than the default 5 seconds, but only for this specific suite. Answer in the test file or playwright.config.ts, I can set the timeout for assertions. Expect configure timeout is 15 seconds. This ensures that expect page.locator to be visible will wait up to 15 seconds before failing.